Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Heather. Kim's here with me, and today's episode is a little bit different. And I'll speak for myself. This is one of my favorite things to do, and that is answering real listener questions, answering your questions.
hmm Yes, these are real questions that have come in from listeners, some from waiting families, some from women considering adoption, and even a few from people on the other side of placement. We love answering these questions. It's also one of my favorite things.
I think this is great because I think whenever people ask questions and you get to hear the answers, even if they aren't your questions, I think those are great opportunities to learn. Also, to know that you're not alone. And if you are wondering something, definitely let us know. Let's talk adoption.com. You can submit your questions because chances are, if you're wondering, a lot of other people are too.
That is so true. And some of the things we're going to talk about today are on different levels, practical versus emotional, and some things that people might be afraid to say out loud or wonder out loud or the thing that I love about a podcast like this is that people can send us their questions right through letstalkadoption.com, and then they can get an answer from experienced adoption professionals. But
Hmm.
if they were shy about asking that, there was probably a reason, so they don't have to ask their own agency. They could just ask
Right,
us, which I love,
right.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, wherever you are in your journey, we hope this is a conversation you can learn from. And let's just jump right in.
Let's go.
So, the first question is from Ryan and Megan in Colorado. We are
Mm.
worried about the financial risk in adoption. What happens if we are matched and a birth mom changes her mind after we've already invested so much money?
Right. So, especially when it comes to private adoption, it is important to guard your heart and also plan wisely financially. Okay,
Hmm.
because a birth mom cannot relinquish rights until after the birth, and every state gives a certain amount of time. So I think this is an important thing to know before you enter into a match. This is also an important thing to know before you pay a single fee to any adoption professional. If down the line we are matched and the birth mother then chooses to parent, what is our next step? Do we start completely over with you? Are you still working with us in any capacity? Get detailed on that and have them email that to you or have it in writing in some capacity, like through your agreement that hopefully you'll be able to review
Right.
before entering into that partnership. So you need to know in advance if they have a match fee, is that non-refundable? If they have a placement fee, is that refundable, non-refundable? Or is it that they have a flat fee and then they just keep working with you? Could there be expenses that are non-refundable and are at risk, such as maybe depending on how far things got with legal work or how things progressed with assisting with some of her living expenses? Those two things I would say are classically going to be at risk if a birth mom should choose to parent. So it's important also to understand the expectation there. With the adoption professional you're working with, ask these things in advance. What's the typical range for legal work? What's at risk if a birth mom chooses her mind and I've paid for some of the legal work? What is your typical amount or average amount for pregnancy related expenses over the course of an entire adoption? Is it 10,000, 20,000, 30,000? Is it 5,000? Because then when you're going into this, if you know that pregnancy related expenses are at risk, meaning they're not coming back to you if she chooses to parent, you know what your risk is. 5,000, 40,000 are two entirely different things. And it's very important to decide how you're going to feel about that before you enter into an agreement and get financially invested. And of course, there's an emotional component, but I think they're worried more about, the financial risk in this
Hmm.
particular moment. But certainly there is typically financial risk in any adoption because of the nature of private adoption and it needing to be truly something the birth mom decides to go through with, but you also need to know what your plan is and your financial recourse, if any. Do you then need to take a few months to recover and catch up a little bit? If you had a certain limit, maybe it was 10, 20,000 for pregnancy related expenses and you spent 10 with her, now you're at 10,000, is that fine? Or do you need to spend a few more months adding to that to
Hmm.
financially recover? And when it comes to pregnancy related expenses, those are at risk because those are typically going straight to her bills, such as paying for her housing. And I don't know of many landlords who are out there that'll just get money back because their tenant decided to parent her baby.
Well, and that brings a very important point up, Kim, and that is that any money that is provided as pregnancy-related expenses is deemed a gift.
Mm,
And I think it really helps to have that mindset. It is not contingent upon her placing, nor should it be, because that would be coercive.
mm,
And, ethical adoption professionals work very, very carefully to ensure that it is truly not coercive, that there is no pressure, that she is able to get help and assistance she needs during pregnancy, and that everyone knows it is not it is not, ensuring that she goes through with adoption. That's very, very important. And it, it can be difficult, I think, for families new to adoption sometimes to understand that. I mean, you and I have both had questions that are kind of wondering why that this is even a conversation, why women would even be entitled to help during pregnancy. And the reality of it is, it costs to be pregnant. There is more doctor's visits, there is more transportation to get there. You are usually eating more, and hopefully you're eating better. There are, you have to buy clothes, and it's not just a top or two. You have to buy new underwear. You have to buy things to be pregnant. And so that help and assistance truly is for a woman who is honestly considering adoption. The key word there is considering.
mhm,
And so I think if you go into that now, Kim, you also said something that was really interesting too, and that was about planning. If you are considering a domestic adoption, you do have to plan. Similarly, if you're considering fertility treatments such as IVF, sometimes even IUI, your health insurance may cover part of that, but for most of the couples I speak with, it's a very, very small part. And if they're going to go that route, they have to be prepared financially. And that can be tough too when you have gone a number of rounds with no success. There is no refunds. Fertility clinics don't give refunds if you don't successfully, carry a baby. They don't do that. So I think any of these family building methods, they do have risk that goes along with it. And I would just really encourage you to talk to a number of different professionals, learn more about the financial aspect of planning for adoption, and definitely don't jump in with the first person you talk to or the first
mhm,
adoption situation you see. Um, you need to learn more, including learning more about organizations that say that there is that that your pregnancy related expenses are not at risk. Definitely, that's kind of a red flag right there. So,
I agree because how are you paying for things that don't go toward your own adoption? Or is that
right.
someone else offset? Because there's no money tree growing in
No,
my back. I don't
no.
know about you.
Maybe this one. I
So
don't know.
maybe that was from a money. No, that was good. That was a good one, Heather. I do want to point out as well that when it comes to assisting with pregnancy-related expenses, while these are at risk, it's important to value the stability that this assistance
Definitely.
offers in the adoption scenario. If she is possibly facing eviction from the apartment she's been in, maybe she even has one or two children, or maybe she doesn't, and the only place she can go to is her uncle's house, and she's going to be sleeping on the couch until she figures it out. But he's across the border in Arkansas. He's across the state line. Okay? So now you planned this adoption and hired an attorney all based on where she was, and now
Hmm.
she's in Arkansas, and you need to get a whole new attorney.
Hmm.
Not to mention, if over the course of that move and now she's in Arkansas, that local hospital doesn't know anything about her or you or the adoption plan. And something that is very important is to prepare the hospital that when they receive this patient, she has an adoption plan in progress. And so that you can also show up according to the birth mother's hospital plan and be there in those moments that you've planned together. But if she is in survival mode, there are a lot of things that can get shaken up if she has to move. Why would you help with her cell phone? Well, it's not like you're just helping her access the internet so she can, binge watch Netflix and, zone out in Words with Friends. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it so that she can have good communication.
Right.
Remember, Heather, recently we had a birth mom that didn't have her own phone, and the only way we could reach her was through her friend's phone. So that meant her friend had to be with her during that communication. And I don't know if many people know this, but when your cell phone bill is late, it reduces your service to text only, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that means no phone calls, only texting. The better the communication is, the better for the health of the adoption. And I think it makes sense that people are willing to help with copays, maybe some transportation to their doctor's appointments. But these are the things. And utilities, why would you pay her electric bill? Well, how long is she going to stay somewhere without electricity?
Right.
So those are the basic things. Now, there are many adoption professionals that will allow you to assist with more categories, and there's just these basic things. But I would say these are the safe, most ethical, most contributing to stability in your adoption when it comes to what expenses you can imagine assisting with. And I love when a family said to me recently, even if she chooses to parent her baby, we would, of course, be overjoyed that she's getting to parent her baby. And if we had assisted her with some of these things and we lost money, we wouldn't consider that losing money. We would consider that we had the opportunity to sow into a life of a woman who is in need.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. And
Took my breath away when they said it.
that really is the best attitude, I think, to go there with. And it may not be financially feasible for all families, and that's okay. But in terms of the attitude with which to look at it, that really is best. So let's go on to our next question, Kim, and that is from Brittany in Illinois. I placed my child a few years ago for adoption and haven't had much contact since. Is it okay to reach out again, or could that be disruptive?
I think it's great to reach out.
Definitely. And I think that, you know, this is not an uncommon scenario.
Hmm.
It's very common for women as they're healing from adoption to step back a little bit if they're struggling, put a little space between them and adoptive parents. Not always. Sometimes they've formed a great relationship and it just continues on forward. But but this is, like I say, this isn't terribly unusual. And, if your agreement was for an ongoing relationship or even through ongoing updates, I think you will be surprised that they will be happy to hear from you. They want to know how you are doing also. It's not just about the child. I'm sure they care about you and would love an update from you as well.
Yes, I definitely think that if it's on your heart to reach out and you feel ready, that you should. And you can, if you have their phone number, you can text them first and say, hey, it's me. Do you mind if I, check in? Could I get a few photos?
Mhm.
Um, or if your contact is through the adoption professional, same thing. Just reach out. I think it's a really, really good thing. People who value open adoption and, really they want they want this. The last thing they want is to lose contact with you. So they'll cherish hearing from you. And, what if they don't? What if they're taken aback? Sometimes it comes from a place of fear, right? But just be assuring that you're just wanting to keep in touch.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Next is Chris and Lauren from Michigan. This is a good one. Our family keeps asking why we don't, quote, go through foster care instead of private adoption. How do we respond to that without feeling defensive?
I know. Getting asked that question when you've, one, already decided, and two, when you know as adoptive parents that the foster system has nothing to do with adoption, If you are able to successfully adopt a child that was originally in the foster system, that's the rare exception.
Right. And
There aren't a million babies waiting to be adopted in the foster system.
no, and I think that's one of the myths that is out there. There's so many children, and yes, there are children waiting to be adopted through the foster system. However, those are not those are typically children who need experienced parents. They are usually, I would say, probably middle school and older. They are part of larger sibling groups who the system is hoping to find a placement for most of them together. And they are not necessarily what couples who have struggled with infertility are are picturing for starting their family.
What I, what feels so, what did they say? How to respond to that without feeling defensive? What I think that feeling of defensiveness or that negative feeling of
Mhm.
that question is just that being a foster parent, adopting through the foster system is a whole different calling. It's a whole different season of life. There's no good metaphor, but it's kind of like if you decided on one thing and then someone was like, well, why don't you just do this over here? Let's say that you want to build a tiny house on 5 acres. And suddenly your parents are like, why don't you just build a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom house in the suburbs? They have nothing to do with each other. That's not your calling, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It
yeah,
does.
two totally different things. And then suddenly on top of already being outside of your comfort zone, outside of already investing and learning about adoption, it can almost feel like you're starting to have to be the poster child to educate people,
Right.
the spokesperson for all aspects of adoption. People, when they learn your plans, especially if your plans have come from challenges, right? Infertility, miscarriage, people question and they can say all kinds of things. Why don't you just? There is no just. Nothing you're doing is just because. Just. It's easy, simple. Just do this instead. Well, adoption is expensive. Why don't you just go through the foster system? Adopt a child who's already here and needs a home. It's not just. Your plan to pursue private adoption is because the Lord placed on your heart a very specific desire and calling.
Mhm.
And it is a calling because just wanting to be parents doesn't make people's hearts ready for adoption.
Right.
It needs to be both. You want to be parents and your heart is open to adoption.
Mhm.
And private adoption comes with that whole other dynamic of open adoption and encountering a woman who needs to choose you in order for you to adopt that baby. The foster system is totally different, and let's explain why. They're usually wanting to reunify the child. If
Mhm.
you are a foster parent, you are a temporary safe harbor for a child. It's a beautiful calling, but it is so opposite of the mission you're on to become permanent parents. Fostering is temporary. If you have the heart that is shaped perfectly to provide that safe harbor to a child or children who are definitely in need. At 2 a.m., there was a domestic dispute, and the authorities were called, and a social worker had to show up. And she had to make the children put all their stuff in trash bags. And then she got in her car with the kids, and she drove to her office. She got on the phone, and she was like, who is available for these
Mhm.
children? So then she finds a family. She convinces them. She takes them over in the middle of the night, right? They get settled in for the night. And they're there for 2 weeks. And then Auntie so and so, a couple towns over, is like, oh, I heard about the trouble. Sure, I'll take them in. They can come stay with me until the birth mom works it out. That's not the calling for parents who are longing for a baby. Could you have both callings simultaneously? Sure. But what people are saying, why don't you just adopt a child from the foster system? That's what they don't realize they're saying for you to do.
Mhm.
Now, you might have the fortunate blessing of having a long-term placement, a year or two, maybe even 4. You might have the baby from 6 months or 6 days old.
Mhm.
You have zero authority in permanently parenting that child. Actually, you don't have any parenting decisions. Like, you can't make medical decisions for the child. You're a long-term babysitter, okay? You are providing a wonderful service for children in your community if you're fostering, and you are willing to sacrifice your own heart for the needs of that child if you're a foster parent. These are very special people, and I'm not saying adoptive parents aren't, but you can see how it's such a different calling. So never feel guilt that you're not on the fostering path and that you've decided it's not for you. Know yourself and know what season of life you're in.
Mhm.
And those two paths are so different. They really have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. And I think again it gets back to, sometimes people don't know what to say, and sometimes they may think that they're helping. And I'm not suggesting, I love how you said it, Kim, that you're the poster child for education. But I think that's something that a lot of adoptive parents find out, is that as they share their hopes for adoption, they are still out there kind of busting the myths that we try to, every week on the
Mhm.
podcast. And it really is because, for whatever reason, modern adoption is not something that is on the radar of most people today. And what is on the radar are these little snippets of, so many children waiting in the foster system, and then, some of the headlines that are sensational surrounding, surrounding the abortion debate, that are just not accurate. And so, you know, Chris and Lauren, it's a great question, and I wish that, we had a magic answer. But I think it may just come down to finding something to say that accurately reflects your heart. And
And
it
it,
may be as simple as, you know what, we feel called to adopt a baby.
mhm. I think too, of course, a question like that, not a lot of people are going to like this word. Some people hate this word, but it comes from ignorance.
It does.
Ignorance simply means there's something that you don't know.
Mhm.
It's not an insult, right? It simply means there's something you don't know. I'm ignorant of that. They're
Mhm.
ignorant of the fact that fostering is not a path to adoption.
Right.
Adoption is a rare exception to the rule. And as adoptive parents, you need to go where what you're seeking is the norm.
You know, and it's good to know, Kim, a lot of states and jurisdictions won't allow families to foster if adoption is their goal.
Because it's conflicting.
It
Their
is. They're
agenda,
not the same thing.
your purpose, your mission, your desired result is not the same. And I think the answer that I would recommend would be, going through foster care is a very special calling that we're just not ready for right now. We want to adopt. And fostering is not a path to permanent adoption. We could foster, but then that might mean that we have a child for a long time who ends up getting placed with their parent, like they're back with their birth parents or back with their relatives. So that's just something that we just don't feel our hearts can handle right now.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's
Mhm.
great.
And
Next,
just how to not feel defensive is understand that it's just coming from ignorance. Don't tell them that, but you might have to do a little. And also, I hope that this talk helps you feel a little more like, I want to say, maybe validated over being asked a question like that. Like, we get it. It's not the path, right? So
yeah. Okay, next question. Ashley from Florida. We were recently chosen by a birth mom, but she stopped communicating. We're
mm,
heartbroken and confused. Is this common, and how should we process it?
that's a really good question. I want to know how long she's been out of touch. I want to know
Yeah.
when the due date is. Was
Yeah,
we need a little
this,
bit more, but this
well,
does
let me,
happen sometimes.
it does. And I will tell you, there can be any number of reasons.
Mhm.
First, she could have changed her mind and
Mm.
just doesn't know how to tell you. But that's not all. I think that's what we go to right away. And I think that's what Ashley's gone to because she says we're heartbroken and confused. There
Yeah.
could be other things too. If you had a great relationship with her, you've been talking, it says she stopped communicating. So it sounds like they had an ongoing conversation or something like that. In my experience, there also can be other things. Um, One that's happened many times through my career is mom got picked up for something. You may want
Picked
to
up
look
like
by the
by the
police.
authorities. Ah, I
hmm
see.
You may want to look on some of the jail logs in her area. You might
Mm.
find her. She
She might have
might
lost her phone.
she might have lost or broken her phone,
Hmm.
or her service may have been turned off. She may have had something happen. For instance, maybe she went into preterm labor. Again, Ashley doesn't say how long she stopped communicating, but maybe she is in the hospital. Maybe she had something happen to her. She could have had her family come and, for lack of a better word, kind of do an intervention. Say no, we're going to help you. You don't have to do that. And she may be making that decision once again. Do I do adoption or do I not? If you are working with an adoption professional, which I definitely hope you are, especially there in Florida, you know, they should be guiding and helping you find her, look out, that type of thing. But she may just simply have had a change of heart and doesn't know how to tell you, especially if you had a great relationship. She may not know how to tell you, knowing that it will hurt you.
Hmm.
I think, if I were to offer any advice, and you may have already done this, but it would just be to reach out and let her know you care about her, whatever she chooses about adoption, that you care about her and you hope that she's doing all right. And that,
Hmm.
we just want to help and support you as in any way we can, even if it's not choosing adoption.
Hmm. Right. And I think this is tough because it's like you had this plan and this communication. You finally reached this very special milestone getting matched with a birth mom who chose you. And now there's just a big void. There's a lack of information. And especially when we're on a path to something that's so important to us, when there's a lack of information, it's hard to accept sometimes.
Mhm.
And I hope that Heather's scenarios of why that could be and why it has been over the
Yeah.
years
Oh, yeah.
are comforting to you. And I think it's important for you to look at what your next steps are going to be and keep moving forward. Um, I think dropping her a line, a text, something that says, like Heather said, we care about you, we support you, and then paying attention to if she does respond, but talking with your adoption professional about how to start getting active again and being shown to new birth moms is
Mhm.
important. And hey, if that original birth mom reaches out again, or she shows up at the hospital in labor and then calls you and says, "Hey, sorry, I had lost my phone," um, or a bunch of stuff had happened, school stuff had happened, I had to get an extra job, I just went basically underwater for a while, but I'm
Mhm.
back, then you can just resume at that
Mhm.
time.
Right.
And that has happened. Remember
You
that
bet.
one time, Heather, where the family was freaking out that the birth mom wasn't responding?
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
And then that's what it was. Here
And
she
that's
showed
just,
up like nothing had happened.
yeah.
Here I am.
Well, and some people think now that your match is all settled, see you at the hospital.
They do. That is
Yeah.
true. And another thing I didn't mention, but that is if she has in her past struggled with addiction.
Mm,
You know,
right.
it may be that even if she was clean, that she slipped. And
Mm,
so she's gone dark a few days because she's kind of backslid into a place she knows she doesn't want to be. But it when we struggle with that, and that's kind of what feels comforting and like what we know, especially in a time where we may be extra emotional, that's happened too. Um, so again, just reach out, let her know you care. That may be all she needs to respond.
Hmm. And leave the door open. You can reach out to us anytime.
Definitely. Okay, last question for today. These have been good. Nice wide
Yeah,
variety.
yeah.
Derek and Hannah from Indiana. We've been told to be open to everything to be chosen, but that feels unrealistic. How do you
Hmm.
find the balance between being open and still honoring what you're truly comfortable with? And before we start, I will just say this is the worst advice ever. Worst advice ever.
Winner of the day, worst
Yeah.
advice. Ding, ding, ding.
Whoever told you be open to everything, yeah, take them off your list.
But you know what else I think there can be a misinterpretation? Be as
Yes.
open as possible in what you're willing to accept so that you can have plenty of opportunities to be chosen, right?
Mhm.
But to be open to everything, regardless of what you're willing to accept, that's like not going to get you anywhere.
Right. And
Yeah.
I love how they ask this question. How do you
Hmm.
find the balance between being open and still honoring what you're truly comfortable with? And I'm going to say that's the key. Only
Hmm.
be open to what you're truly comfortable with. Because if you can make that decision now, here, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what we are comfortable with. Then when those decisions come in the future, that, well, you were open to everything, here's everything, and it's so far outside what you're comfortable with. Now you're not in a good position to make that decision
Right.
because you've been chosen. Your hopes are up. That first call, I want to talk to you about an adoption. Oh, your heart starts pumping. You can't believe somebody's, here talking. And then they tell you all about this possible adoption that has things all over the place that are like, I don't think we're open to that. But you have to make this decision from a place of, well, do I say yes just to get a baby, even though I'm not comfortable? And that's not a good place to be.
Hmm.
That's not where you want to make decisions from. You want to make decisions in advance from a place of peace, a place of education. You've done your research, you know what you're open to. And maybe 6 months from now, you do some more research and you broaden what you're comfortable with a little more. Those are healthy ways to set your adoption preferences, not to be open to everything. So then you kind of think, and I think the thinking, Kim, is that then you'll get chosen for all kinds of stuff and you get to pick and choose. But this goes back to the recent podcast we did about, can you say no? Should you say no in adoption? I know for us, we want families to tell us very clearly what you're open to. And we review preferences a lot because when we have someone choose you, we want, you know, the goal is that it is well within your preferences because we
Hmm.
know what you're comfortable with. And that really is a not just a better place in terms of uh, better for your adoption professional, for you, it's also a healthier place because you kind of know your boundaries. You're going to know what your yes is, and you're not going to have to be struggling with trying to take something that's way far out and trying to make it fit into what what doesn't fit.
Hmm. I love that you talked about this and kind of pushed back on how, it kind of comes down to how do you identify what you're comfortable with?
Yeah.
It's not about being in your comfort zone. When we think of what families are comfortable with. We mean what will they say yes to? But when they say they're not comfortable with something, it helps to have a talk around why. Because the last thing you want to do as hopeful adoptive parents hoping to get chosen by a birth mom is to say no to something because it's not comfortable when we could just have a 5-minute talk about it and suddenly you're comfortable and you're open and you would say yes. And so now you have that opportunity with that birth mom who would love to choose you. Sometimes people say no to things because they think a birth mom wouldn't choose them for that,
Mhm,
such as interracial adoption.
mhm,
Um, or sometimes it's more about we don't feel comfortable having it be obvious that we adopted. Well,
mhm,
I think that there's a little bit of work to do there, a little bit, because being a family who got to adopt a child, you are a walking testament to God's answer to your prayers. That's not something to hide. It's not something to be ashamed of. Although there's also balance. Okay, so now your child grows up being someone that has to always explain, or it's obvious that they were adopted because you're white and they're black, right? But I think that there's an opportunity here that if you feel you can be bold enough, you can help shape that child's identity in Christ. So that's first and foremost. So
mhm.
that any other identity people want to label them with just slides right off of them because they are so solid in their identity in Christ. That goes for everyone. That is something I should probably just have it like if I'm going to ever get a tattoo, which I don't have any. TMI, identity in Christ is like the number one thing that helps you stand against everything that the world is trying to do. And parents just want to protect the child against what the world is trying to do, destabilize them, make them feel insecure, make them feel less than, let them not be accepted. They're going to get bullied and this and that. But identity in Christ is the biggest weapon against that. Um, and also, what are you comfortable with? Well, I don't feel comfortable letting a birth mom know how we're doing. I don't feel we're private people, we're more introverted. I don't feel comfortable texting with a birth mom. But then maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. And maybe we can help you understand more of the why you should
Mhm.
value that, why a lot of people value that, and why your child may value that so that you can steward that connection for your child's sake going forward. So you are stewarding that connection in this time so it's not a burden on your child's shoulders in the future. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of things with preferences that people aren't comfortable with, but education and understanding things on a deeper level can help them get comfortable and have more opportunities to adopt. So let an adoption professional pour into you with that and talk to you about that. I know you and I, Heather, we love conversations like
Oh
this.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. So, so Derek and Hannah, how do you find balance between being open and still honoring what you're truly comfortable with? Honor what you're truly comfortable with.
Yes,
That's the answer.
period.
And as
Hmm.
Kim said, if there's areas that perhaps your adoption professional is encouraging you to be more open, take the opportunity and learn, but don't be open just to be open, especially if you know you would say no to that, or it's something that I don't love this phrase, something that's not going to be comfortable because, there are many times we're called to do things afraid. But,
Hmm.
doing them afraid and doing them because we don't want to do them, those can be two different things. Open adoption might be something that you're open to, but you're a little afraid. That's great. But you don't ever want to say you're open to it when you know you're not going to do it. So
Hmm.
honor what you're truly comfortable with and take the opportunity to learn if you need to.
Yeah, I love that you said don't be open just to be open and don't be comfortable just to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Do the work. Do the work.
Well,
Learn. Hmm.
these have been such honest questions. And I can see why maybe they were sent to us because they may be questions that you don't really have anyone else to ask. You don't have an adoption professional you can reach out to or that you feel comfortable asking some of these things. So I just know we're really grateful for all of you who took the time to send questions in. And if you're listening and want to send your questions in, like we said at the start, let's talk adoption.com. You can contact us there, send your questions in, and maybe we'll get them answered on a future show. Every part of the adoption journey comes with questions like these.
Absolutely. So you're not alone. If you were wondering, about these yourself, I hope this brought a little comfort to you. And you're part of a larger community of adoptive parents at all stages of the adoption process, and it is a beautiful community. The world of adoption is so beautiful, and there's so much support out there for you. And we thank you for trusting us and letting us to be part of your education process and part of the cheerleading squad that's cheering you on your path. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Adoption, and we'll see you on the next one.